It's a dilemma that has split the council's ALP aldermen. Should the rail line be cut at the Civic as part of an inner-city strategy? Or should it be retained for the extra 800 metres to Newcastle Station, as supported by the ALP's pre-election policy of last year? At last week's council meeting, 4 of the Labor aldermen supported cutting the line, but Alderman Greg Hees and John Manning broke away from their party colleagues.
We campaigned at the last local government elections on the retention of the railway line to Newcastle, and we gave an undertaking to the people of Newcastle.
Even though Alderman Hees and Manning were the only Labor representatives to stick to the party's policy, they've been reported to the ALP's Administrative Committee for breaking caucus solidarity. Caucus Secretary Alderman Dennis Nichols says reporting breaches is a requirement of the rules. Alderman Manning believes it's ironic that he's in trouble for towing the party line.
Of course, it can be alleged and said that the other aldermen didn't support party policy. So there is a certain amount of incongruity about it.
Alderman Manning says the issue will be resolved through talking and Sydney won't need to get involved.
Mr Adler told a business luncheon in Newcastle today it's entrepreneurs who've helped make Australia what it is, the result of taking risks and committing investment to both heavy industry like BHP and small business. From his viewpoint, it's the hard and often controversial decisions like FAI's own to close Lambton Colliery that have to be made if businesses and ultimately Australia are to prosper.
Then we went to the unions, we went to all the people that we service, and we said, we have a number of plans that we would like to carry out. Closing was one of the alternatives, but not our favoured one. But after all those alternatives were exhausted, we chose to do that. And as they say in the stock market, first lost, best lost.
Advancements in retail and technology, the changing role of women and the ethnic mix in society represents a different way of life in Australia to what it was a decade ago. Mr Adler says if business doesn't change proportionately, we'll be left behind on the world market. And what of our recession? Mr Adler believes we're on the homeward end, but there's still a long way to go.
We bottomed out about 6 months ago, but we believe that the recovery will be very long and very slow. We believe that unemployment will stay quite high until 1994, 1995.
Another vital ingredient to changing this is a rethink of government policy.
And we have to redefine the industries in which we'd like to major in, and we have to concentrate on reallocating and redeploying people. We should, for instance, be the medical centre of this Pacific Rim. We should be the tourism destination for this particular area.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Chief Paul Harrigan usually hands out the treatment on the paddock, but he was receiving some today. The big prop hurt his shoulder in a tackle, bringing back frightening memories of 2 seasons plagued by injury.
The past has been fairly bad for me, but I'm hoping to play 22 Winfield Cup games this year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Also on the injury hit list, second rower David Boyd. Boydie also needing treatment for a sore shoulder. But both players have been given the OK to take on the Panthers, the same lineup which gave the Steelers a workout at the ISC. The night showed they won't be taking any backward steps in 92, and the daunting task of playing the reigning premiers on their home turf doesn't faze them.
Every time we've played there in the past, we've lifted ourselves, particularly in the forwards, and we've come away with 2 draws. So this year we're looking to do the same, if not better.
Getting to the top in sprint cycling is a long, hard road. Anthony Pedden from Spears Point knows this, riding 60 kilometres a day on the streets and countless circuits on the track.
You do get sick of it, but it's all worth it in the long run.
Anthony went down to Queenslander Danny Day in the 1,000 metre sprint final in the Aussie titles last weekend. Only one rider is taken for the Olympics in this event, so Anthony misses out. But he's still heading OS, competing in America, as he has for the last 2 seasons.
There's just no substitute for racing and experience.
The 21-year-old is now aiming for Commonwealth Games selection to compete at Montreal in 1994. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It's unfortunate for the locals that Sunset Boulevard is the most convenient route for university traffic travelling from the southeast. Just before 9 o'clock this morning, 19-year-old Ronald Huntley of New Lambton lost control of his vehicle when he rounded a bend and was confronted by vehicles banked up from the University Drive roundabout. His car skidded on the wet and badly cambered road and slid sideways into a tree, impacting just behind the driver's door.
Oh, it happens regularly. Every time it's wet, we have accidents, and out of all these trees along here, they've all got niches out of them.
Huntley suffered only minor injuries and was allowed home after a check-up at the Mater Hospital. But that wasn't the end of it. Another driver also lost control of his vehicle at the same spot and slid across the road, colliding with a car travelling up the hill. A Subaru then cannoned into the back. The nearby residents want measures taken to slow the traffic, especially during the 8 to 9:15 peak period.
Every time it rains and we have this early period of the morning when they're all going to university, you can hear the skid marks and you hold your breath.
They've contacted the Newcastle Police Traffic Branch and discussions are expected with the City Council about possible remedial action.
The quality of this year's harvest promises to be high, with the only setback a hailstorm that damaged about 10% of the crop, taking the shine off other orchards. Despite this, the local growers will continue to sell to the Coffs Harbour and Tamworth markets, bypassing Sydney and Newcastle because of transport costs.
The more we can send to Coffs Harbour and Tamworth, we don't have to pack that, it goes down in bulk bins, and it's a saving both to the grower and the consumer.
Surprisingly, growers are rejecting government grants for the industry, preferring to make it a success on their own.
I think the industry has to do it themselves and not rely on, or not or not try and worry about the government assistance.
Overproduction is the biggest problem facing the industry, and there's little hope of exporting any surplus.
If we can get into the Southeast Asian markets, Singapore, Penang and those places, maybe it'll lift.
Last-minute rehearsals for the cast, whose play revolves around the lives of 2 intellectually disabled people. Nick, who's intellectually disabled in real life and the play, uses this as an excuse to carry a chip on his shoulder and be negative towards society. Ruth's disability is Down syndrome, both on and off the stage. In the play, she's on the verge of leaving high school because the ridicule by schoolmates about her condition has become unbearable. A situation about which her parents can't see reason.
It's the kids, not the teacher, that pick on me.
Is it my imagination, eh? Every school she goes to, they're always picking on her.
All right, Amy, have a day off tomorrow and then you can go back nice and fresh on Monday morning. No.
Ainsley and Tim, founders of the theatre company, have been researching the plight of intellectually disabled people for over 12 months. Their findings urging them to tell the story, one which is only truly captured through Ruth and Nick's unique qualities.
There's a complete lack of inhibition, so that makes for a very honest response that actors go to acting school to strive for.
I sing, dance, walk, laugh, and my stories.
I'm not a disabled person. I'm a person with a disability. I'm a person first.
The group will perform in Newcastle at Merewether High School tomorrow.
Western Suburbs Leagues Club was the venue for a national media hookup through Sky Channel to launch the Mitsubishi Challenge of the National Basketball League, with each of the 13 member teams indulging a sumptuous serving of basketball hype as well as lunch. Suffering from a lack of cohesion and professionalism for the past few seasons, the Foster's Falcons of 92 are taking a whole new attitude to their playing roles, their off-field responsibilities and appearances, and it is reflected in their attention to detail in all areas as well as on the court.
Oh, without doubt we've got a more professional attitude, Michael, and we've got a tremendous coach this year as far as I'm concerned, and he's made the big difference. He's got the players together, we've got some new players, and I think we've got a franchise that's going to threaten the rest in the league.
For the Falcons, one of the last official functions before their first match on April the 3rd against the Gold Coast. And after their pre-season win in the 3-on-3 and a third in the Kmart Classic, the Falcons will be a team that others will have to watch for.
We haven't done ourselves any favours as far as being able to sneak up on people now, because we did perform well in the pre-season and teams will be taking us seriously, and it is a tough league. Every game's going to be anybody's game. You know, there's not really an easy win in the competition, and we're looking forward to our first game up at the Gold Coast. They've won the preseason tournament. We'd like nothing more than a road win and a win against the preseason tournament champions, our first outing.
"62-year-old Savage walked into court with his two daughters, Julie and Christine, by his side. The well-known artist helped his wife, Faye, commit suicide in an Anna Bay unit on July 7th last year. In evidence today, Dr Graham Choate testified that both Faye and Neil Savage were suffering from life-threatening cancer and confirmed that both had wished to end their own lives. The court heard the couple consumed a cocktail of drugs, but Neil Savage survived because he later vomited up the mixture. Savage told the court that when he woke up, "I couldn't believe it. I felt as if I'd failed to carry out a very important pact. I began to realise I'd stuffed the whole thing up." Counsel for Mr Savage, Brian Doyle, told the court this was not a matter for the euthanasia debate. He went on to say what he did was an act born of his love for his wife. In handing down his sentence, Judge Freeman said this was an act without a sinister nature. However, he said the court's decision must not be seen as supporting the act. Savage was ordered to do 200 hours community service work. Outside the court, the family was shaken but relieved.
I'd like to thank my loved ones, my daughters, all the people that stood behind me when I was going down the tube.
Savage reiterated what he did was an act of love and he was not ashamed. With his family by his side, Mr Savage left the court to celebrate at his daughter's home. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Vicky Crane and her family have been saving for years for their dream home in the Whitburn Heights estate, but their dream has been rendered powerless.
We were ready to move in and get all settled this weekend and start a nice new life in a nice new home until we came up with the hitch of no electricity.
Vicky says she paid for the power to be connected more than 3 months ago. With the family having to move out of their rented house by next week, Vicky phoned Shortland Electricity and was told the power would be connected last Wednesday. It didn't happen.
This morning my husband rang back again and said, "Look, please, what's happening? We've got carpet layers coming today. We need electricity." And that's when he found out it hadn't been connected to the estate yet.
Hilton Grujon is the developer of the 80-lot Whitburn Heights estate. He says the power should have been connected to the final stage of the development months ago.
We made all the financial arrangements in the end of October last year, and they undertook to commence within a month.
A spokesman for Shortland Electricity says a number of factors, including bad weather and faults in the cables, have delayed the connection of power. As late as 1 o'clock this afternoon, the authorities sent through this release saying full supply could not be guaranteed until Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. But only 2 hours later, the Shortland electricity trucks arrived here on the estate to connect the power. Shortland Electricity says while there'll now be power in the Crane's new home this weekend, the final testing of the system won't happen until early next week. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The 18-hole course, covering around 70 hectares, was designed by Steve Smyers, one of America's most renowned designers, and former golf pro Australian Bob Stanton. It's been 2 years in the making at a cost of $20 million, with the funds coming from Australian company Rodland Golf Corporation. The complex features double fairways and 70 bunkers, has its own water supply, plus Australia's longest hole measuring 573 metres. It has 6 different tees per hole and is open to the general public, accessibility being a priority.
I think a lot of people want to play top championship courses. They have a great difficulty to get on because obviously most quality golf courses are private clubs and you can't get on.
So now it's time to test it out. And what's the pros' impression?
I think it's one of the finest golf courses that I've seen in Australia. Obviously Queensland has the jump on most golf coursing complexes here in Australia, but this course is not going to be that far behind it. At the moment it's very young. I rate it's going to be very, very good.
Mr Newstead hopes to host a world-class tournament within 2 years.
Would like to, but it will take us probably at least the next 18 months to grow and mature this course before you can allow thousands of people to walk around.
Development-wise, the project still has another stage to go. A 100-room hotel, 190 villas and a major clubhouse are also planned. Development applications have already been approved. If the course proves successful, construction could begin within 12 months.
This is the pride and joy of Ipswich pumpkin grower Jeff Froloff, a 200-kilogram monster. Jeff's pumpkin was one of 60 on show at the Lismore Shopping Square in the Giant Pumpkin competition. It was a serious business with the veggies checked for metal inserts, which some tricksters used to boost their weights. According to the growers, the secret is plenty of water and mulch. Whatever the case, one pumpkin like this means hundreds of litres of soup and thousands of Flo Bioki-Peterson's favourite pumpkin scones.
More than 200 engineers attended today's opening ceremony. Over the next 3 days, they'll discuss engineering trends and new developments. The Institute's president says Hunter engineers are responsible for many of these developments. For example, the structural and civil work done during our earthquake, engineering practices being used in mining, the chemical engineering involved with winemaking, techniques used in keeping our water clean, plus efforts to clear up Newcastle's air.
The clean-up at BHP, for example, over the last 20 years, or particularly in the last few years, is entirely engineering.
The conference's keynote speaker says the creativity of Australian engineers is widely acknowledged, but the country is lagging on the world economic frontier because opportunities to exploit these ideas are few. He attributes this to our allegiance with England.
Britain is now European. They're no longer Commonwealth. Their focus is in Europe. Now you are so close to Asia Pacific. There's a huge market there.
Some of the areas Mr Chu says we could better capitalise on are our computer and electronic engineering.
In Indonesia, 160 people share a telephone. So there's a tremendous opportunity for Australian engineers.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Local retailers had their frocks flounced and flared on stage at the Port Macquarie RSL Club. Leather, lingerie, sports gear and bridal wear were all on show. More than $6,000 was raised, with a portion of the proceeds going to the local Schizophrenic Society.
The upgraded facilities include improved dental services as well as rehabilitation and community service sections. Health Minister Ron Phillips sees the service as a milestone in country health and demonstrates that statewide cuts in hospital services have not affected people in the northwest. There's been an increase of 39 general practitioners and the overall medical staff has risen by 5%.
Narrabri is up there with the best in terms of coming to grips with modern health care.
Narrabri Hospital now provides an efficient home care program and community services, resulting in shorter stays in hospital.
The important part of healthcare today is to reduce the need for people to go to hospital, but when they get to hospital, make sure they've got access to the most modern care and techniques available in the world.
Council did not dwell on the issue. The application was passed unanimously and a packed gallery left the chamber immediately. The hostel will be built on Talga Road. It'll be home for 16 Aborigines. Residents made no secret of their concerns when it was mooted. Cries of vandalism, theft, violence, potential alcohol and drug problems. Last week they met with the developer, Aboriginal Hostels Proprietary Limited. A spokesperson says most of the problems appear to have been overcome.
The property is Woodville, 15 kilometres east of Armidale, and 400 people from throughout the region gathered to see the fruits of a year's work by knitters Australia-wide. Diana Wood launched the idea of people knitting small woolen squares to promote the use of wool and joining them together to make blankets for the needy.
It's been absolutely overwhelmingly successful. I was up to 180 rugs at the beginning of the week, and now we have 190 and over 5,000 squares, so it's just been wonderful.
But everything was not all wool's way. The Australian Cotton Foundation was represented, pushing the line that getting into blending would actually boost wool sales.
And designers like blends, they like using lycra with other fibres. So I think wool's probably got to learn that blending is the way to go. It's great to have 100% natural fibres, but there's a vast market out there for blends, and that still means the fibres being used.
Moderating that view was the Wool Research and Development Corporation, which accepts the idea of blending with cotton and other synthetic fibres, but believes this is only part of the answer to increased production.
Research and development to produce easy care properties for wool, so that wool garments can be thrown into a washing machine, taken out, dried, and then worn straight away. And there's a lot of research needed to obtain those properties.
Woodville today boasted a display of wool right from the champion fleece to the finished garment. And some of those blankets for the needy were arriving right up to the last moment. This consignment flown in direct to the property.
If you're looking for an eccentric crank or a mechanic with a petticoat, Maitland is the place to be this weekend. They're just a few of the nuts and bolts terms likely to be heard around a steam locomotive shed. The curtain came down on Maitland's last commercial steam railway operation nearly 10 years ago, but the veterans of that era, the 10-class locos at the East Greta Junction, now maintained by volunteers and apprentices, have never been more popular to an admiring audience. Thousands crowd into the old yards each Steamfest to hear the locos come alive and clank along the rails once again. All of Maitland is taken in tow with jazz, steamboats, trucks and machinery, heritage art and crafts, train and plane races. It must be fairly competitive to keep Steamfest thriving with all the other festivities going on around the region as well.
Well, yes, probably, but this is unique. I mean, Maitland is steam. It has been since many, many years, and I think it's become the steam area of New South Wales.
BMX bike riding is one of the biggest competitive sports in the country, and it's not confined to the young people of our community. At Sawtell today, members of the local club were putting the finishing touches to their preparation for the Australian titles to be held in Cairns over Easter. 15 riders will take part in the championships, and they range in age from 5 to 55. Laurie Barnett, the senior citizen of the troop, and hell-bent on becoming the national champion. Tanya Barrows was the 15 years world champion in 1990 and is the defending state and Australian champion, and she is expected to do well. Plenty of others have a chance for national honours, including 10-year-old Simone Crossland, the current New South Wales champion. At the Port Macquarie RSL, the cream of Queensland's and New South Wales black belt taekwondo exponents are attending a two-day conference, and the 75 martial artists form the biggest ever gathering of black belts in any style to meet in the country. Besides the improving of techniques, the area of discipline within the academy is a key subject, as is the formation of new patterns for brown belt taekwondo practitioners. It is hoped that this weekend's conference will be the forerunner of an annual talkfest designed to foster the sport.
Today's demonstrators ranged from toddlers to senior citizens, some of them clutching walking sticks in one hand and a protest placard in the other. The Port Macquarie Hospital Action Group organised the protest to try to fight off the government's plan to privatise some of the area's health services. The Greiner government's plan involves the May Nicholas Group contracting to supply public hospital services in the region. According to local police, it was an orderly affair as the marchers made their way to a local high school to hear speakers condemn the scheme. Amongst the speakers was Peter Botsman, the Executive Director of the Evatt Foundation in Sydney, an authority on American health systems.
The situation is that we're going down the American route, which is madness. There's too much money being spent in America, and 100 million people don't have any access to healthcare facilities in the United States.
A start is scheduled to be made on Port Macquarie's new hospital in May.
The first try came from the Greens, turning the home team around, and David Banovich got the benefit of a good bounce, towed through and scored wide out. And the second try came from a touch of individual brilliance from co-coach Peter White. Quick hands saw White in possession just inside his own half, but he cut a swathe through the thin Blacks' defence and raced away to score. White was again in the thick of the action, and a lucky charge down saw the 5/8 dish off to the speedy centre, and White streaked away to score under the upright. Barraba stretched their lead when the backs again found Tamworth shallow, and the kick and chase resulted. Banovich pounced on the ball, chipped again, regathered superbly and scored his second. But Tamworth never gave up, and their pack, who had held the balance of power in the forwards for most of the day, were rewarded with their second pushover try late in the match to gain some consolation.
The Nightcap water treatment plant was a joint project between Rouse County Council and the New South Wales Public Works Department. The Deputy Premier and Minister for Public Works, Wal Murray, officially opened it.
We're working for the day when, no matter where you live in this state, access to a good water supply will be possible.
The Nightcap water treatment plant uses relatively new technology known as dissolved air flotation. Conventional treatment plants rely on gravity to settle the solids. The DAF process produces tiny bubbles which attach to the solids and float them to the surface. From there, the sludge is skimmed off the top and the water passes through filter sands. Residents are already enjoying the benefits of the new treatment plant.
The first half was all Newcastle, Cronulla scrambling in defence, Schuster's penalty attempt off the upright, the Knights so close. Cronulla could do nothing right. Speechley left the field with a knee injury early in the game. The Knights were bombing tries left, right and centre. Against the run of play, Cronulla posted first points. Winger Adrian Brunker gave the Knights the half-time lead. The Sharks closed the gap early in the second half, 6-4, but that was as close as they came. Newcastle surged away, Ashley Gordon putting the finishing touches on a resounding 22-4 victory.
The award presented today by Department Secretary Derek Volker to Regional Manager Terry Doherty recognises the swift and efficient action of staff during the Inverell floods. The floods hit on Thursday the 7th of February. The next day the 9 Armidale staff had set up a temporary office in Inverell to deal with claims while keeping the Armidale office open for business. The department often awards staff for a job well done, but this is the first time the Secretary's award has been presented.
It's an historic occasion as far as the department itself is concerned. We have lots of offices which provide really terrific service to people who have need of social security, but we thought that the efforts of the Armidale Regional Office, particularly in the Inverell flood, warranted awarding this award for the first time.
Inverell now has its own social security office, so if a similar situation should arise again, there will be no need for the Armidale office to come to the rescue.
An excellent crowd saw the international clash. The powerful Korean outfit opened well, grabbing the first set convincingly 15-6. The tall timber up front were in devastating form and the Aussies had no answer. The second set followed a similar pattern and the visitors raced to a 2-set lead with a score 15-10. Then came a valiant fight back by Australia, with the changes made by coach Phil Borgard working to perfection. To the surprise of many, the Aussies were back in the hunt by taking the third set 15-7. Stung into action by the reverse of fortunes and the ranting of their coach Lee In, who copped a red card for a court intrusion, the Koreans stepped up a notch and cruised home to a well-deserved win, 15-7 in the fourth.